Okay, thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon for session 6.3a. This is going to be a 30-minute session. We have two speakers, Tejas Manohar, who's co-founder and co-CEO for a company called High Touch, and he's invited a co-speaker, Eric Edelman, with a company called Vendor. And they have a very interesting topic, something that was new for me and I found very interesting in reading their summary. It's called Data Activation and Reverse ETL. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Tejas.
Hey everyone, how's the conference going?
Good.
So far. How many of you are traveling in from somewhere outside of the Boston area? Nice, almost everyone. What about outside of the US as a whole? Cool. It's amazing to see just people from all around the world at this conference. It's already been a great time for me. Awesome. So today we're going to be speaking about what's after analytics. So all of you are probably using your data warehouses and business intelligence solutions for analytics today. Today we're going to be talking about how to take those initiatives to the next step and really make data the center of an organization. So as we had in the intro, I'm Tejas, co-founder and co-CEO of High Touch. We're the leaders in what we call data activation. And with me, we have a customer of ours, Eric. Eric, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. I'm Eric Edelman. I'm the head of data and analytics at Vendor, and we're very happy customers of High Touch.
Cool, sorry. All good. Sounds like some mic issues. Cool. So a bit about us. I'm one of the founders of High Touch. High Touch is the leader in what we call data activation. We work with super large companies like Spotify, Warner, Blizzard, AutoTrader. And we basically help all these companies take data from their data warehouse and use it to power business operations. So when most people think of the data warehouse, they think of analyzing data and kind of affecting long-term strategic decision-making in a company through BI solutions like Power BI or Tableau. But when we think about making data central to an organization, we think about how do you take all the data and insights in your warehouse and stream it to all the business tools that exist around a company where business teams are actually living, like Salesforce or Adobe or Facebook ads, so that you can actually use all these rich data and insights to power marketing and sales and finance and various business operations. So excited to speak with everyone today about this topic that we're pioneering. So raise your hand today if your company uses BI tools like Looker or Tableau. Awesome, looks like an overwhelming majority. Now, how many of you all have marketers or business people actually exporting CSVs from these BI tools to do something somewhere else? It looks like an overwhelming majority again. That is exactly the problem we're talking about today. So for a long time, I think this was really the goal of all data teams, and this wasn't easy. Creating BI dashboards that showed all the metrics, showed all the trends, showed all your data in one place was very much a difficult task and still is today. I mean, you had to worry about the speed of serving these insights, the cost of serving them, the ease of setting it all up with limited headcount and a lot of data functions at very large companies. And the tooling has only seen great improvements really in the last 7 to 8 years with cloud data warehouses and BI solutions. And for everyone in this room, a data job well done is considered having reports that are refreshed weekly or daily, having CSVs that anyone can pull out anywhere, anytime, and being able to use data and analytics to serve important business decisions and functions like board meetings. But today we're going to contest that. We're going to talk about why we don't think data teams should stop at reporting and analytics, and why data should actually be this kind of central nervous system that just spreads throughout the operations of a business. And before we talk too much about the technology, let's chat a bit about the outcomes and the value of using data in this way, or activating your data in an enterprise. So for one, data can be used to generate top-line revenue and outcomes by actually operationalizing it. So one of our customers, Nando's Chicken in the United Kingdom, actually uses high touch and data activation to take all the insights that they have about their customers, how much they're spending, how often they're visiting restaurants, and instead of just using that to optimize things like store locations and kind of long-term planning, they actually use that to drive more foot traffic to the stores with marketing campaigns that they're running. Another example here is powering live operations. So instead of just answering questions or reaching out to customers for sales based on information like when's the last time you reached out to them, we actually see most modern leading companies taking data and insights from their warehouse and using that to optimize these processes, for example, at B2B companies like Retool. And lastly, tons of people are making decisions around your company that can be informed and optimized by data. And BI is great for kind of strategic, long-term planning, but how do you actually think about an organization equipping people on the front line, like in support teams or sales teams, to leverage data and information about what customers are doing to best respond to them or upsell them, for example? And our whole theory is that this is not the answer. So BI reports with tables and charts and graphs are not really the answer, and you can see that by how people are taking data out of these systems and bringing them somewhere else with CSVs, for example. So what is the answer? The trend we are seeing across all enterprises is a rise of SaaS. When you ask someone, where are business teams actually living? Where do business teams spend their time today? Where are marketers, salespeople, support, finance teams spending their time today? It's kind of pivoted to these vertical SaaS solutions like Salesforce or Adobe or SAP, Facebook advertising platform, that each team uses in their own specialized way. So we started to think about how can we serve teams best, and it comes to serving them where they already live today. So introducing data activation. The idea behind data activation is really taking data and insights from your data warehouse, no matter if that's Snowflake or Oracle, Google BigQuery, or any sort of kind of SQL or analytics system, and making it actionable to the entire business. If I'm to explain in a simple way what you can imagine with data activation in the company, I would say, imagine changing a score like lifetime value once in your data warehouse or BI solution, and having that updated automatically in 100+ business tools across the company. That's really something that you should envision powering off the central data infrastructure that all of us are building today. And the most interesting part about this paradigm of data activation, of turning the data warehouse into not just a destination of data or a landing point, but actually turning it into a source of data for the rest of the business, is that it can just fit naturally into the technology stack and the reference architectures that you all are creating today at your companies. So you can have data flowing into the data warehouse in any way possible using extract, load, transform solutions like a Fivetran or Informatica, or even using event streaming like a Kafka. You can have data orchestrated and transformed and modeled in your warehouse through any sort of set of tools. You can analyze that data in BI tools, but then you can take the same source of data, the same source of truth you're using, and start to plug it into the rest of the systems in the company without any friction or any sort of re-architecture. So for some context on why think about this, why activate data, at a high level, really it's about going the next step into the next level to empower business users to take action on insights in their day-to-day processes. And these are all some of the brands that have just adopted data activation in the last 6 months. So to pinpoint some very specific use cases of how data activation can take place, let's look at sales as an example. Sales teams live in solutions like Salesforce, Gainsight, HubSpot, CRM solutions, and they're often just reaching out to these customers in a very unpersonalized way. Maybe just talking to customers about the last conversation, notes from that, et cetera. But if salespeople at B2B companies can actually use all the digital insights, like did this customer get stuck in some part of our website? have they talked to someone else on my team before? Did they do something in our product? Did they look at our pricing page? Did they drop off from it? To inform how they're talking to customers. Everyone likes that. I mean, no one really likes getting outreach from a salesperson who's not giving you a personalized experience and understanding really what you're doing behind the scenes. The same goes for marketing. You can really just think of marketing as sales at scale in like an automated fashion, whether it's on an ad network or an email platform. And just to give you some idea of how wide and horizontal this idea of data activation can be, we even have customers and companies using data activation for financial resource planning, as an example, in systems like ERPs. Instead of working in CSVs to massage and transform data and things like Excel before putting it in a system like NetSuite or SAP, we have customers doing that data modeling and building that central ledger directly in their warehouse and just streaming the updated data into those ERP systems directly so finance teams can work out of them. So as a next step, I'm going to introduce our customer, Eric, here, who's going to tell us about how he's actually leveraged data activation at his company and show us some of the technical details under the hood that make this happen.
Awesome.
Eric, want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, thank you, Tejas. So hi, everyone. I'm Eric Edelman. I'm the head of data at Vendor. And I'll start by describing Vendor. So most of you have invariably purchased software before and know that it's not always a very fun process. It can be quite cumbersome. You've either worked with your procurement teams or you've done it on your own. Vendor is a technology and data-powered procurement team for hire. So we buy and renew all of your software for you. We get you the best price at the right time, all without you having to negotiate with your suppliers. Today, I'm going to talk about how our data team goes beyond what we consider the typical core mandate of a data team through data activation. So to start, I'll go through a few examples of how we activate our data at Vendor. I'll move to a little bit of technical detail, and then I'll wrap up with what we think are a few important points around doing data activation with confidence and integrity. So the first example is an activation that's really important to us. It's around automating customer touch points that are reminders to our customers to take actions that are important steps of their SaaS deals life cycles. So the problem is, as Vendor, we are tech-enabled, but there's a huge human component to the services we provide. So historically, CSMs would be constructing and sending these email reminders to our customers by hand. As you can see, this is probably pretty resource and time intensive and introduces room for human error. The opportunity we identified was that our data warehouse already had all the data we needed to know exactly when these touch points should occur and what they should contain. So the solution we cooked up was to employ high touch and basically automate these email reminders for our CSMs. So the benefits are obvious, right? There's massive internal time savings and a more consistent customer experience. So now these emails, they're happening on time, every time, and they're never forgotten, right? We've reduced the human error. So we actually send thousands of these emails a week now. The second type of data activation we'll cover is how we activate our data in Slack. So I'll touch on kind of two different legs here. So we activate data in Slack internally and externally. Externally, this is really just an extension of these intake reminders, we call them, these customer touch points that we just referenced in email. But when we get to a certain time horizon with the deal, things get really urgent. We need to make sure this customer takes this action so we can serve them better. We escalate to Slack. We have shared Slack channels with them. We know what those channels are. We know everything about the deal. We know exactly when they need to know what to do and when. So we just escalate those same messages, that same information that we were sending in email to Slack in a curated message directly to our customers. Internally, we also activate our data in Slack, and I think two really fun ways. One is we love celebrating the wins that we achieve for our customers. So let's say we save a customer 50% on their renewal with, let's say Salesforce. We want to know about that. We want to celebrate that. So we automate, basically upon deal completion, our data warehouse is aware. Through high touch, we kick off a message in Slack to our teams that highlights the team member who achieved this outcome, a few details about it, and a link to actually go check it out if you want to emulate that success, right? We also activate our data in Slack for pretty strategic reasons. We actually use high touch to solicit feedback from our customers, but also to take that feedback and push it out to the team for notable survey responses, good or bad. We want to know when our customers are unhappy. We want to know when they're really happy. The third activation we wanted to highlight, which Tejas already touched on a little bit, our CRM is supposed to be the hub in which our sales teams, our marketing teams, our CSM teams do their work, right? So previously, they felt the need to hop between systems, spending part of my day in Salesforce, part of my day in NetSuite. They're just going all over the place. We use data activation to turn Salesforce into the place they always wished it was. We take important bits of customer context, like for example, for us, like an LTV, but not quite. Like an important metric for us is how much money have we saved this customer in the last 6 months? It can be $10,000, it can be $150,000, but either way, our team needs to know that before the conversation with the customer. The fourth and final activation project that we want to highlight is kind of funny. So we activate our data in spreadsheets as well. A lot of data teams consider spreadsheets to be their mortal enemy. We embrace the fact that some of our teams are going to use spreadsheets whether we want them to or not. We would rather them be operating with some guardrails to operate between, rather than just going wild in spreadsheets. So we actually pre-populate. An example here is our head of operations would compile a quarterly report in a spreadsheet comprised of data from a bunch of different source systems. So they would have to go get it, put it in a spreadsheet, go get it from another place, put it in a spreadsheet, continue the process. We now pre-populate this pre-formatted report for them on a quarterly basis so that all the things that are repeated each quarter are ready to roll for them to share with the board. So right now, I'll just take a quick opportunity to recap what we talked about before we go into a little bit of technical details. So with high touch and generally activating our data, we're able to, with just a select few best-in-class tools, offer really highly configurable and flexible but dependable solutions to our business teams. And oftentimes, between conception and launch, we'll be done in a week. It's incredible how fast we can actually deliver on these activations. So some of the ways we talked about activating our data are prompting our customers for actions, soliciting customer feedback, and really just generally optimizing the way we run our business, right? We're saving our head of operations time, saving our sales team's times, and so on and so forth. So this is a messy and simplified version of our data stack at Vendor, but the reason we wanted to bring it up is because it does a good job of exemplifying another thing that Tejas already touched on, which is that for us, data activation didn't necessitate some sort of like architectural overhaul, right? We already had a data stack in place. We just slotted high touch right in to where it sits, and we're able to hit the ground running with data activation from day one. We didn't need to move anything around. We didn't need to re-architect our stack at all. For example, with the automated emails, the data we need is in the vendor platform itself. We bring it into Snowflake. We transform it in dbt. That triggers a high-touch sync, which pushes it to HubSpot, sends the email. So it's really simple. We did that in just a couple business days. So next, we have a video that we're going to just get a little bit more into detail with on how we implement high-touch at Vendor.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to give a quick walkthrough of the use case described earlier in the presentation. So here's our high-touch set of destinations. The one we're going to showcase today is HubSpot. And to recap the goal in mind, we have deals that we broker for customers in the vendor platform, and we need to sometimes prompt that customer for action before we can actually negotiate and execute that deal on their behalf to save them both time and money. And so here's a dummy deal where I am trying to buy Snowflake. And so the customer can interact with this here, but we sometimes need to make sure that they actually submit an intake form with enough advance notice for us to find success for them here. So how do we do that? We have all this data in Snowflake. And so what we do is we first transform it in dbt. We actually have a pretty creative use case of an incremental model here where we're effectively creating intended message payloads to pass to HubSpot through high touch so that emails and Slacks can be kicked off. And so in this case, we're basically generating a few data points about a message we intend to send to me about this Snowflake deal. So what happens next? The job that executes this model actually is what kicks off the high touch sync that makes use of the model. So let's take a peek. Here it is. We're using the dbt cloud integration to execute this sync. This model just does some light transformation on the data that's generated by this model that we just looked at, and then passes that over to HubSpot. So what does it do? It's doing an upsert mapping on email and basically dropping a few payloads of deal information onto fields on the contact object in HubSpot. HubSpot then has a set of workflows that pick up on the presence of these of data in these fields to then kick off messages to customers, but also even suppliers and internal stakeholders as well. But again, the use case here is to prompt a customer for action. And so one of these workflows picks up on that data payload landing on the customer object and kicks off this email. So I receive an email prompting me to take action on this deal so that I can buy Snowflake. So this is just one of many use cases that we have at Vendor for data activation and high touch and the ancillary tools and technologies, but others include prompting customer stakeholders for feedback, even prompting our suppliers for feedback, and also just myriad other notifications and data enrichment in our CRM and elsewhere. So we're really excited to continue to find new use cases for data activation at Vendor and add values in new and exciting ways.
All right, so now that that's through with, I just wanted to touch on a couple of the things that I think are really important when a team decides to take on data activation. So for us, these are really high SLA workflows. These are customer-facing communications, right? We want them to be reliable, and we don't want erroneous data being pushed around. So there's two main levers here for us. One is testing and CI. We use DBT tests and CI to basically ensure that any changes we're making in our data warehouse are not going to adversely affect our models or any basically the logical limitations that we set in tests. We have an in-house tool called DT that does data diffing between a proposed warehouse state and a production warehouse state, so that even if we're not breaking models or invalidating tests, we might still be introducing a logical error, and we want to detect that too. So that's why we have that. Finally, Spectacles tells us if there are going to be any adverse effects in BI when we're making a data warehouse change. And then finally, kind of the last line of defense for us is data observability. So our data observability tool of choice is called Metaplane, and it does three main things for us. One, it detects what it identifies as statistical anomalies in the data warehouse. So let's say it's a massive change in the standard deviation of a field on the table that we want it to track. So that's one way it tells us about basically anomalies that testing in CI couldn't catch. Second, it also tells us about upstream schema changes. So let's say our software engineers have made a change they forgot to tell us about. We need to know. It tells us about those schema changes as they happen. And then finally, it also gives us lineage and usage statistics and information so that we can plan changes to our data warehouse. So between this and all the power of high touch and the surrounding technologies, we're able to not just activate our data, but do it with speed and confidence as well. And that's all I've got. Back to you, Tejas.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing some customer use cases to really bring the technology to life, Eric. Overall, just wanted to summarize kind of how data activation can fit into a modern company's architecture and what it can drive. So just to sum it up, some of the top use cases we see is actually taking data to change operations, to generate revenue, to empower kind of everyday decisions in the front line. So really when we think about self-service data analytics or self-service BI, I don't think BI often has the solution there, or reporting tools are often not the solution. It's really bringing data and insights to the front lines, to the places business teams already live in. And finally, powering live operations in a company instead of just kind of serving results or answers. And if anyone's interested in learning more about data activation today or even trying it out in your organization, so as Eric saw, it's pretty easy to use the high-touch application. And every day, dozens and dozens of companies just sign up online and give it a shot to move some data from the data warehouse to operational systems like a Salesforce or an advertising campaign or an email campaign. So you can do that online at hightouch.io. We also have a booth here at CDOIQ, and I'm happy to chat with anyone after the talk as well, just to answer questions on our technology or Eric's use cases or kind of how modern companies are implementing data activation and how it's changed the way they've done analytics internally. Cool, thank you. And here's both of our emails if anyone has more questions.
We have a few minutes. If anyone has a question, raise your hand, please. Yes.
So I'm curious as to the concept of data activation versus the traditional one or the ambitious ones that people have to have all the data in one place, like the data warehouse or data lake. Doesn't data activation create some kind of side effect, like like a huge need of taking a lot of data to different systems if you need some blends, or a limited reach of data if the data is not present in that particular system, or even having reporting in different systems of the company. So I'd like to hear from experience what kind of side effects we could expect.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a common question when this concept's introduced. So if I have to repeat it back, basically the question is, doesn't the idea of data activation or taking data and putting it in more places in a company kind of go against the common philosophy of put all the data in one place and operate it in kind of a central source of truth, the data warehouse? I actually think of it the opposite way. It's more like you get all your data into the data warehouse. You create the kind of source of truth models and insights about your business there. But I don't think BI is necessarily the only place where business teams and business users actually want to be able to view those. So the idea behind data activation isn't really creating a new source of truth. It's getting more value out of the source of truth you've built in your data warehouse, so that you can not only present the central insights there in BI, but also in other business applications. But so that no matter where someone's viewing data, like a lifetime value of a customer or revenue of a customer or their history, it's all powered by the source of truth versus some ad hoc point-to-point processes that these engineering teams would probably otherwise implement, if that makes sense.
I will second that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's more like taking the source of truth and just spreading it to more places, because otherwise, the common way that a support engineering team or marketing engineering or data team would implement these things would be outside of the data warehouse and trying to create an own source of truth in an ad hoc way, which would really go against that philosophy.
Yeah, I would just add on to that with my own experience. In practice, teams will get the data that they want where they want it. This just provides, one, I guess, beneficial effect here is that it provides a gateway, it provides an opportunity for governance, right? For example, HighTouch offers a Git sync feature, so all of our models and syncs, which is the only way we move data around at vendor from our warehouse to other systems so as to not circumvent our testing and governance layers, is version controlled too. So there's just a lot of opportunity to have a better understanding and control over these processes that would happen otherwise in some more bespoke fashion.
Like CSVs or APIs or something like that. Eric answers better than me.
Question, if anybody has another question?
Cool. Any questions? Any questions? We can also chat afterwards if anyone's interested.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Cool.